Hi, everyone. My name is Robin Stafford, and I am a regional engagement officer working with UVA clubs in Virginia. The UVA Club of Charlottesville is happy to offer this conversation today with director Chris Farina about his documentary, Seats at the Table. This film chronicles a college course at a maximum security juvenile correctional facility that brings UVA students and incarcerated young adults together to read classic works by Russian authors. We will show the trailer today and then hope that some of you in Charlottesville, Richmond, and Harrisonburg will be able to watch the entire documentary this coming Sunday, August 2nd at 2:30 on VPM PBS. We will put the link to the viewing schedule in the chat box here and hope you can join that. Ashley is going to show the trailer now, and afterwards we will see you back here with questions for Chris. Feel free to enter any questions you may have in the chat box at the bottom. We had some questions come in with registrations as well, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here.
For many years as a teacher of literature, I was trying to create a classroom which felt alive to me and authentic. And these are the kinds of things that we talk about in this program. We use literature as an opportunity to talk about life issues that are relevant to all of us, that are universal. If you boil it down to the most essential element, this is a class in which two groups of young people, the same age, 18 to 21, one group from a university, the other group from a correctional center, come together, sit down side by side and have conversations about life through literature.
When I walked into that building every Tuesday afternoon, it's like I wasn't locked up. It's like for the next 3 hours, I can live, I can do me, I can be myself, I can open up.
It's not often that you spend 90 minutes talking about the things that you're the most scared of, or the people that you love the most, or like what you want to do with your life and what you've done wrong with your life.
I was expecting them to come in here be scared or look down on us like, yeah, they're criminals. I didn't expect for us to be able to connect, our life is the same. In some ways, we had to struggle with the same problems.
The students and the residents grapple together, and they realize it doesn't matter if you're a 20-year-old college student or a 20-year-old youth, in a correctional center. You know what it feels like to lose someone you love. You know what it feels like to struggle with family situations. You know what it feels like to try to search to find your place in a world that doesn't always make that easy. Those are the issues of Russian literature, and those are universal. I have found that they connect with these themes at a visceral level. They know what it means to lose their freedom. That's not an abstract question to them. They're incarcerated. And it's incredibly valuable for them to be able to talk about that theme through a story from their own experience and then share that with the students. So students come away with a totally new understanding of that whole theme in Russian literature.
A lot of these stories really have helped me realize, a lot of inner issues that I've been dealing with my whole life that I really couldn't quite piece together in words until I heard it in the story, and then it would say it and I'll be like, that kind of reminds me of myself, And I'll think about it, and then I'll start thinking, well, I need to work on that, and then I'll work on it, and then it'll just get better, and then eventually it's just not even a problem anymore.
Just to see that people that had a different background from me can kind of connect with me in a lot of ways, and through these stories that was so unique. So I like that.
We were very similar in a lot of ways, and a lot of the things we valued and a lot of the things that we loved and cared for. And I think I found a beauty in having those unexpected relationships, I guess.
Just a chance to talk to all the college people and stuff like that, and just to actually interact with people that are our age, and they might not have lived our life, our type of life, because we're criminals and stuff like that, but they might have the same feelings, because they're still people, and even though they lead different lifestyles, all the books kind of link all of us together.
They literally told us straight to our face, you cannot understand what it's like to be incarcerated. Even if you guys think you have any sort of understanding, you don't understand. And they were very real and open to us about that, but also I think forgiving and knowing that we wanted to understand but couldn't.
I will never be able to understand what it's like to live in a juvenile correctional facility. I can try to understand them and what they have told us. I can relate to the way that they love their family, the way that they really care about their mom and regret the ways that they have disappointed their parents.
People, when they come in here, they don't see us for who we are. They just see us for our crimes. It's hard. It's it weighs you down. TB babysitter doping my mind, draining my smarts, making me blind. Want to be more than what they say I can be. A doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, free.
18 years old, my rhymes keep me sane. 18 years old, I see bullets and brains. 18 years old, my story has my story been told. Anything can happen when you're 18 years old.
And I know that people on the outside really do care about us, because I've been thinking nobody really cares about us, you know what I mean? We're juveniles, in a correctional facility. So I don't think the community really, paid too much attention to us. But then I see the students coming here and they're acting like if they were if I was a regular person on the outside. So that's what motivated. I'm you know what, that kind of changed my point of view now.
Coming to these meetings every Tuesday, they made me feel alive. They made me feel that real sense of connecting with other people, truly, and with your heart, and they have helped me more than they'll ever know.
I hope students come away from this experience realizing what's possible in a classroom, what's possible in their own lives. I hope that the residents come away feeling empowered with an altered perception of who they are and what their worth is and what they're capable of. Feeling like they deserve to be at that table.
It's terrific, Chris. As I said, I hope you all will be able to see the full documentary on Sunday when it airs at 2:30. Welcome today to Chris Farina, director of this project. He is a class of '82 alum of the college. And what did you study, Chris, when you were at UVA?
Well, at that time they called it American government, so it was in the political science department.
And how were you introduced to Andy Kaufman's class?
Well, it came about because of a previous film I had made. This was a film about actually a Charlottesville teacher, John Hunter, who created the World Peace Game, if people are familiar. He taught at Venable, which is the elementary school just a few blocks away from UVA. And through that process of making that film, it was a mutual friend that introduced me to Andy Kaufman, and that led to me actually coming and observing his class at this point it was at the Beaumont Correctional Center, or the Juvenile Correctional Center. And just literally being in the room and watching the authenticity of the relationships at each of the tables and the emotions, the it was just really moving and inspiring. And this was years ago, because it took a few years before I was even given permission to make the film. But I was so moved by what I saw that I felt like I had to make it in order to share the story with others.
And during the filming, were the students self-conscious about your presence, or?
Well, that's always a bit of an issue, but you know, having done this before, there's also ways and methods to get the subjects more comfortable. And in many ways, that's a question of spending a lot of time with, just to distinguish, so we'll say the students or the UVA students, the residents is the term for the correctional center, incarcerated youth. And I was down there even when we weren't filming, and was just kind of sitting and observing in order to learn, in order to get to know the youth better. And that quality of creating a trusting relationship, and even the early interviews, which at some point, sure, you're looking to pick different youth in order to show the transformation, which really shows the power of the educational model that's within this class. But it's also a question to get a relationship and creating a sense of trust. And if you have that one-on-one trust with the individuals, then when you set up a camera at a table conversation, I think it makes them a little more open, you know, and a little more comfortable. Plus, the other really strong point of this class was the real engagement that the two disparate groups of youth had around the table. So in that sense, we took a stand back kind of approach to filming and just allowed those conversations to happen and tried not to interrupt as much as possible. And I think, again, their energy and their focus on each other dominated, as opposed to thinking about, all right, what's the camera, you know, capturing of me?
Right, right. How many hours of footage would you say you did capture over that?
Oh, I don't, I'm guessing, because I haven't tabulated this in quite a while. We probably at least 150 hours or so. I mean, so I would say that, you know, each class was a few hours, but I was down there many times with the interviews, and also with the UVA class, because they would have the way the class sets up is the UVA group meets at UVA one day, and then 2 days later, they have the class meeting at the correctional center. And then the following week, they debrief again to kind of handle what they've been going through and how to learn and how to process, and a little bit of how to facilitate the conversation. And then they go back to the prison again. And I was there all the time. And even Andy, the professor, would go down and work with the residents the day before the class in order to go over the story that they were reading. And even when, I mean, it was a pretty limited budget, so it's not like I could film every day I went down there. But again, it was spending a lot of time with the youth, and in many ways, just trying to be non-invasive and learning from them, observing them.
And how did the residents get into the program? I mean, was it something they applied to do, or?
Yes, they did apply, and they had, the facility had to approve of them. I mean, again, these were college age juveniles, so they essentially had to have that accreditation to be able to take a college class. And they also had to be basically of 18 up until, you know, the day before 21. And there was that sense of worry. I mean, there's a lot of logistical worries about bringing outsiders together into a juvenile correctional center. And so in that sense, there was also the sense of them approving who they felt would be, enabled to participate in the class. And then a lot of it is, because Andy has taught this now, I think since 2008, there's a lot of word of mouth in the facility from residents who had taken it in the past year and really raved about the experience. And so a lot of the residents want to take this class because of what they've heard from their fellow residents.
And was this program, or has it been duplicated in other juvenile correctional facilities, or?
Well, not specifically. I mean, there are certainly other, you know, we actually had a screening at Boston College, and the professor was somebody that took his students into a class as well. So there are individual stories and experiences of this kind of model, which to me is really unique about this. And to me, it's the brilliance of Andy Kaufman as well, is setting up a framework where the education is very much owned by the students. And this isn't, a lot of people have a bit of an expectation that, oh, this is the professor and the university students going in to teach the residents. That's not it at all. They learn from each other in a really strong way. And in so many ways, the residents so much take that literature and apply it to their personal stories that it's a really strong, you know, effect that it has when they talk about their lives through the prism of the literature. And that really affects the university students as well. So in a sense, the stereotypes that are entering into this class are completely defied by the experience. And I think it, you know, to me, I'm not an expert at anything, you know, not in education, not a correctional reform. But what I wanted more than anything was for people to see the youth in this class on both sides, their hearts and souls as individuals and not as labels, not as types. And so that people would think after this film, when they think about a correctional center, a prison, they realize it's individuals in there, that there's a real capability of changing their lives. And education is really the key to that. And I think so often people get into their own bubbles. They forget the individual on the other side. And I think this class completely denies that, in that the individuals who go through this experience will never think again about that other group in the same way.
We do have a question that came into the chat, sort of related, but how do you assess short and longer term impact on both residents and students?
Well, again, I'm sorry, I know, Andy, there was a study a few years ago that kind of tracked the various participants. So they had the feedback from the individuals talking about how it really affected their lives. For me, it's more of a question of some of the youth that I got to know. I mean, like, in particular, Kelsey Bowman, who was a UVA student in the class, who actually spoke at our screenings. She's up in Boston now. She spoke at a screening at Boston College, and we were at Harvard Law School. And she switched her complete career direction and ended up going to BC to get her master's in counseling, in order to go back to, you know, the correctional institutions, that's where she really wants to pursue her career, to kind of help change lives. And there's other students in there as well. And then there's even the people who are still heading on that career path. There's still individuals in our community that now think differently about the issue. And I think even that by itself has a huge change. As far as the residents, there's, especially with the fact that they were juveniles, there's a real restrictions on access to them that was imposed by basically the Department of Juvenile Justice of Virginia. So I've been able to get in touch. There was about 9 or 10 that saw the trailer about a year later that I went down and showed the trailer at the center. And it was a really wonderful experience because they really liked it. They all thanked me in a really authentic way. But as far as, you know, because they're juveniles, the correctional, you know, bureaucracy kind of protects their privacy. So it's not like it's made obvious that, oh, here where they live, here's how you can contact them. I've basically had relationships with 3 or 4, couple of whom who have spoken. One spoke at the Virginia Film Festival screening afterwards, and have communicated with a few. But it's, you know, it's not that same where I, you know, basically can get in touch with them the way I can with the UVA students.
Another question just came in asking, were there any subjects that were taboo or not allowed to be talked about?
No, no, not that I can remember at all. I mean, it was very much like literally the way the class works when they're at the center is Andy will talk about the story and the author for literally like 3 minutes. And then we'll let, the class is set up that there's basically, I think it was 8 different tables, and each table had 2 UVA students and 2 or 3 residents. And it's that same group each week. So the relationships become so much stronger over a 10-week period. And there's no sense of, oversight or looking out to what they can speak about. I mean, Andy is certainly debriefing with the UVA students, and they were certainly bringing up questions if they were having problems initiating conversations and getting to know the residents better. But in terms of the conversation at the table, it was literally 5 people sitting around a table talking about a story and then talking about their lives.
And is this, somebody's asking, in the course catalog at UVA, so is it in the English department? Is it a traditional literature class, and then it describes the correctional piece?
It's in Slavic studies.
Slavic studies, okay.
Yeah, that's where it is. And it's called Books Behind Bars, Life, Liberty, and Leadership. And Andy, he usually teaches it. I mean, this past, because of the pandemic, it was suspended in the midst of it. He usually teaches it every the winter spring semester. And now with the correctional center that was in the film has been closed, it's now at Bon Air, which is outside of Richmond.
Let's see, were the conversations guided to start off on the same page?
It really, in some ways, the students and when I say the students, the UVA students were given a little bit of a sense of how to facilitate and get the discussions going. And so each table, you had those 2 separate students that were creating their own somewhat path to the conversation. It wasn't that each one was doing. Again, it's the brilliance of Andy as an educator, and that the students own what they are doing. They're not just listening and repeating. They're really owning this education. And what's really wonderful about this class is as it proceeds and you get into the 5th week, the 6th week, the 7th week, the residents become more and more part of that ownership. And so in many ways, they are also initiating conversations. I think there's a little bit of discomfort, I think, with them at first, and that is very much dispelled because of the friendships. And being somebody of an older, compared with these 20-year-olds, I was just so blown away by the quality that was in this class. And on both sides, it really was inspiring. It was really moving. It gave you a real sense of hope that how you can change lives by both listening and connecting with others. And that idea of taking 2, what most people would see as very disparate groups and bringing them together, and the benefit that has for the members of each group. I mean, that's something we as a society should, and especially as an educational institution, should really be advocating for more, because it's just obvious of how that changes the lives of the participants.
That's I'm wondering what are your upcoming projects?
Well, right now there's a bit of an interruption due to the world, but one actually connected to the older UVA students here, if you can remember, and this is very different. It's not a social issue film in any way, but I've basically want to do a documentary on the old Virginia pep band. There was a guy who approached me who was actually one of the directors of it back in the early 80s. And I remember, I've been in Charlottesville for a long time. And I remember the pep band, especially in the days even before George Welsh, when UVA would always be down about 35-0 at halftime. But the crowd would hang around while the pep band played. And then after they finished, the crowd would leave the stadium. And they were, for people who don't know about the pep band, there was a real sense of it was like a Saturday Night Live kind of skit. It had that 70s and 80s sarcasm. I mean, they mocked the former governor of Maryland that was thrown in jail and played Jailhouse Rock. And it was really hilarious. And personally, I feel like we need to come back to that humor in some level. And so I see it as a funny film that hopefully that once the pandemic passes and we can raise the money, we'll get. And then another film, which is also quirky, but completely different. And I've already shot about 50% of this, but then I had to, because of Seats at the Table and with dealing with the bureaucracy, once they finally gave me permission, I had to drop everything else and just focus on this film, because for all I knew, the bureaucracy was going to change in a year and it would be revoked again. So I had to go right to it. But it's a film about, and I've never figured out the way to explain the quick pitch, but if you can imagine a body at death and the journey from death to the grave, and think of the various people whose jobs are part of that journey. And that could be as simple as the funeral director, a gospel singer, a person that cuts the lawn at a graveyard, a gravestone carver, and these are all people I've filmed, just to get them to talk about their kind of everyday approach of how they think about death. And that's just something that's always been inside me to try to demystify, and felt like the people who deal with this on a daily basis will have more of a casual insight into it. And it's just a film that's always been in my head. I mean, literally for about 20 years. And I started filming it about 6 or 7 years ago. I mean, now with funding and everything, that's going to be an issue for a while. But once the pandemic passes, that's, you know, those two films are the ones I hope to complete in that next year.
In terms of this, is there possibility for a follow-up? Could you ever do a follow-up, or would you ever follow another class as they go through this Behind the Bars program again? Or?
Well, to be completely honest, this film is in quite a bit of debt. And then when I say that's my debt, so the idea of heading back there'd have to be some green associated with it. I mean, again, I've done a few, even another short film, if you guys are familiar with the Holistic Life Foundation, which does fabulous work in pretty tough neighborhoods. And I'm from Baltimore, and it's in West Baltimore. And they take basically mindfulness and go into the schools of the really impoverished neighborhoods of West Baltimore, and have been doing incredible work. So I've had 3 different films that is very much focused on people working with youth in kind of a classroom setting. And so in that sense, I'm always looking, you know, it's just as an individual, because again, I'm no expert at all. I just really hold teachers to a high level. I feel like they are really our heroes in life. And in many ways, I see them almost as social parents, as they're passing down and basically enabling our youth to grow, to learn, to even discover who they are and who they will become as adults. So I've always been moved by that relationship between teacher and student. So yeah, so if there's green there, I'll go back.
And you know, if people seeing this movie are inspired to try to start something like this in their community, or, I mean, is Andy, do you know, is he open to being approached with questions?
Yes, that is exactly the mission of this film. And in the same way that the film that I did about John Hunter and the World Peace Game, which if there's, I don't know if you're familiar, John became very famous after the film because he spoke at the Maine TED conference and was literally chosen at the 30th year anniversary as one of the top 75 TED speakers of all time. And he was just, I shouldn't say just, but he was an elementary school teacher that nobody really was aware of other than his students and the parents of his students until we made the film, and then TED elevated. And now he has created a foundation, and literally the World Peace Game has been taught in 34 different countries. And this is the same goal. I've been trying to find foundations to partner, because I'm just an individual, so I don't have the wherewithal to implement social impact. What I was hoping is that the film could be used as a tool by groups that would share in that mission to inspire the replication of this type of experience. So I've been reaching out for years, the last couple of years, for many different foundations. And then Andy is now being involved with the UVA Center for Teaching Excellence. And so we're really seeing that standing as a way to raise his awareness for other teachers in higher education. And so we're very much hoping that the film, and again, the film doesn't tell you how to do it, it just inspires. And then with that inspiration, we hope the experts come in, use that inspiration in order to affect true and positive change.
Ashley has just put the link to the viewing schedule for the full movie, again, to be shown Sunday, 2:30 p.m. PBS station. Residents in Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, Richmond should be able to have access to it. And then in terms of, Chris, how about being able to stream it more easily, or
well, at this point,
down the road?
Yeah, down the road, because at this point we're still working with, I hope, basically I'm in the process of trying to sign a contract with an educational distributor, and literally have a couple of offers right now. There are certain rights because of giving it to American Public Television, which is the distributor to public TV. There are restrictions on how you can make it available because they then own the rights for a certain amount of time. But once we get that educational rights going, then it'll be basically processed through an educational distributor. But the other thing is for those of you who are in Charlottesville, if you ever want to talk about this from 8 feet away, I don't know if you know, but I've owned and run the corner parking lot since the 1980s, and you could always come by and talk to me because I'm there a lot. So, but no, we're hoping, in the same way that World Peace, and other fourth grade achievements, the idea is to get this film shared widely and to get as many people as possible to see it. And to be honest, particularly educators and the youth as well, to inspire them to consider this kind of path towards their, future life.
That's terrific. Thank you for joining us, everyone. This was a wonderful way to spend our midday lunchtime seeing a little window into this. It was really terrific. And thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And
thank you all.
Thank you.